Hello again, and welcome to the 24 March edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Our special guest today is State Representative and Majority Whip Jay Edwards. He represents District 70, which includes Tiverton and Portsmouth. Welcome back to the show, Jay.
Thank you for having me,
You've been on several
Doug.
times. There's just so much stuff, as we were talking about earlier, to talk about. I guess we'll try to get to the key ones first. Let me start with marijuana. What is the process? What would be the process for legalizing it in Rhode Island? And can this just be done by a vote at the State House?
Well, Rhode Island's actually looking to do it legislatively. We're probably the only state in the country that will do it legislatively if we do it. Every other state has done it by majority vote of the people. And it's an involved process. I went out to Colorado a year ago and met with the Department of Revenue, which runs the program out in Colorado. I talked to the people who are growing it, the people who are distributing it, and it's a rather involved, and there's a lot of moving parts to this program. You know, I know the people who are advocating for it are saying, you know, it's very simple. We'll just legalize it, and then this industry will sort of sprout. They did that in Oregon, and they went from 6,000 licensed people overnight to 65,000 people, and they classified it as a crop. And lo and behold, they had marijuana growing virtually everywhere in the state, and they really lost control of it. Colorado did a much better job. They took about a year, maybe 18 months, to implement the program. They've kept it all indoors. They have these radio frequency stamps that they attach to the bud when it's taken off the mother tree, and as the plant grows, the radio tag stays with it, and it stays with it right through to the point to where they dry it and they bring it out and they sell it. So when these things are in transit, the police can, you know, take a look at a load, they can identify them, they can see where they're coming from and where they're going to. So they've done a pretty decent job of controlling it that way.
Yeah. How is the money working out there in Colorado? I mean, are they making the money they thought they would? I
think they're making a little bit less, but they've devoted a lot of money to their schools and to drug programs, which they had originally intended to do. But one of the biggest problems they have is the people who are selling it have like trailer loads of cash on hand because they can't put it in banks because the federal government won't allow them. They are paying people in cash, you know, because they can't get checking accounts.
Now these are legitimate
businesses,
marijuana businesses,
and they're doing everything in cash because of the federally insured banks won't touch them.
Really, because of the federal laws.
It's still a federal crime.
See, that's kind of the issue. I guess my question is, and you were out there, you probably know as much as anybody up in the State House about this. Do you think we know enough, and do you think we have a plan yet going forward to answer some of these kind of questions?
I think we have a draft plan. I don't think we've fine-tuned it, and I think before the state goes down the path, we need to really look at it hard and see if this is really the way we want to go. There's going to be an initial outlay of cash. Colorado was very clear about that. For them, they're a much larger state. I think they laid out between $35 and $50 million before the first dollar came in tax revenue. State of Rhode Island will have to lay out between 12 and like $17 million before the first dollar comes in to establish the program, to set the people up, to get all the people and things in place before the program actually starts, if we want to go with taxation of marijuana.
Yeah. One of the things that kind of interested me was that there seems to be no quality control over a lot of this stuff, even for medical marijuana. There doesn't seem to be any kind of FDA or anything that actually tests this stuff as it goes in.
Colorado does.
They do.
Actually, yeah.
So there is a way to do that.
There's a testing program. They're testing it for THC and some other values. On the medicinal side, there are these CBDs or something that they test for that are the beneficial uses of cannabis.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, like Representative Canario has put legislation in to have a study commission on this, and as a state, I think that's a really good way to go. I support his study commission because I think we'll work through a lot of the issues that we still have questions about, and we can bring the experts in from Colorado and other states that have already implemented this and find out what their best practices are and what to avoid as a state if we want to go this route.
Yeah, that seems to be the logical way, and kudos to Dennis for doing that. It's especially interesting because he's a former policeman, and so I think he's got the right idea. Let's come up with a decent plan before we jump into this thing.
Or we might decide we don't want to do it. You know,
Yeah.
you might find that it's more of a headache and the revenue is not really going to be there. Or it might be something the state wants to do, but with, you know, a lot of preset guidelines.
Yeah.
So I think a study commission is a great way to go, and as I said, I support his commission.
I know that you know, we saw the opposite way of doing this through public referendum in Massachusetts, and they voted essentially to legalize marijuana, and yet a year later, almost, well, not that far, but later on, they're still not able to do anything.
Well, it's not going to go online until July of 2018, which is Colorado. And I talked to the head of their DOR. The gentleman was very clear. You need a year to 18 months to do this and do it well if you're going to do it.
Yeah, I think the key is to have a plan and do it well.
But you're going to also have to anticipate you're going to have to spend money
Sure.
up front to do that.
Yeah, one of the things you know, in Rhode Island, I know the funding for, you know, anti-drug or awareness programs gets funneled through the state from the federal government, but we don't do any state funding of our own. I would assume that would change if we started looking at something like that.
Well, as a new member of the House Finance Committee, we as a group are looking at the governor's budget, and included in that is some payment to the cities and towns for their drug programs. And we're working our best to make sure that we pick items that are going to be most beneficial to the cities and towns for these items that are sundry.
Yeah.
And this is one of the items we're looking at.
Yeah, because I think we've got to do a better job at educating our kids and the public in general about
We
this
have
stuff.
such a huge problem with opiates in this state. I mean, I've had, you know, personal experience in my family with this. I've had, you know, 2 people die of opiate problems, and it hits families right across the board. I mean, there is no class that's excluded in this.
And the thing is, it's like a lot of things. It can happen to any of us.
It does.
You know, you get an accident, you get something hurt, they prescribe opioids for the pain, and then you get hooked on the darn thing. So, yeah, absolutely. So,
And it could be disastrous to families.
let's talk for a second about a perennial issue, at least for the last several years, has been the school funding formula. I'm not sure, I think I asked you this the last time you were on. Is there anything that can be done about this, or are we in Portsmouth, since we have a relatively high per capita income, are we just complaining, or is this something, the basic bottom line is we're losing like $250,000 a year in school funding.
Oh, I know we've talked about this in the past, and everyone in Portsmouth and Tiverton feel like they've been penalized. When we changed the funding formula, we tried to make it so it would be universal, that the amount of money would be universal no matter what the size of the system was. So we have the money follow the students.
It's based on number of students?
Based on the census, yes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you know, we had a system in before that was sort of arbitrary, that, you know, in Portsmouth and Tiverton benefited fairly decently from, and our inner city schools did not. So we've changed the program to follow the students. That has, in turn, really hurt some of the rural towns, because we have smaller schools, and we also have higher transportation costs. So as a group, the Finance Committee is looking at that. The governor has looked at that. Tiverton has asked me in particular to look at the transportation costs. So we are looking into this to see what we can do to help the rural communities, especially with the transportation end.
Yeah, that's a major problem here, and we can see that continuing for the next couple of years. Another issue that relates to the schools is I know there's local concern in Bristol, Portsmouth, about this concealed carry law and allowing people to have a concealed carry gun on them on the school grounds. And people are looking for some kind of action to preclude that. I'm not sure if a law would be effective or not, but what is your position on this?
Well, I've worked a tremendous amount of my career in Massachusetts in schools. And Massachusetts has a no-carry law. It's always, for as long as I've worked in Massachusetts, it's always been in effect. But on the other side of the coin, you also hear the people from the gun lobby say, we've had the ability to have people go in with concealed carry since, I think, the early 90s, and there has not been one incident in Rhode Island with any kind of gun issue from a person who has a legal right to carry a gun.
Yeah, so essentially it's a hypothetical issue.
It's a hypothetical. Rhode Island has the 8th most stringent gun laws in the country. I think we have been very good at getting good laws and implementing them. Our death by gun rate in the state has been reduced. So I think our laws, as effective as they are, have been really working for us as a state.
Yeah. Now, I mean, would this be a significant change if they just made the carve out for schools or something?
Well, one of the bills read that if you were an off-duty policeman and you were in uniform and you walked into school, you would be obligated under the law to not have your gun.
Yeah. Well, there's got to be a carve out for that too.
The law as written did not.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have to look at.
Because that was another question I was going to have. What about our school resource officer and policemen when they have to go?
I believe when they're on duty, they're exempt.
Okay.
But if they happen to, go pick up their child after school and they're in uniform and they have their gun on, or if say they're a detective and they go in and they have their gun, they would not be exempt.
So things have to be ironed out a little bit.
Yeah, I think, like with all legislation, we need to go through the details, and
everything
the devil's
seems
always
so simple
in the
on the
details.
outside, right? Yeah. Let's talk about a few economic issues relating to the East Bay, particularly. How do you feel about the governor's plan to make colleges more, the first 2 years of college is free?
We saw the governor, and we heard her promotion of this in House Finance, and she did a good job. When she really wants something, she's always very effective at getting her message across. She brought in some 200 people, had them bust in. What I have heard pretty distinctly and very clearly from my constituents is that if we're going to put some $30 million into education in this state, they want it to go to K through 12, which would reduce their taxes. Rhode Island, if we did this, would be the first state in the country to actually implement free college for our residents. And I'm not sure if this is the best use of our cash at this time. If we were flush with money as a state, it's a great idea.
See, that to me is the interesting part, because it's a fixed amount of money here.
And we're creating a structural deficit. We're creating something that's going to go on for year after year after year that we're going to have to fund.
Yeah.
So it's not just, let's do it now and see how it works. This is, if we go down this route, we had better be prepared to do it every single year till the end of time.
Yeah. It's just,
and the administration talked about, when they did bring this through, they talked about, this is right now just for tuition. If we do go down this route, what they will eventually be looking for will be for room and board and all the fees and stuff for some of the students as well.
Yeah.
So this is not just a $30 million issue.
This could get expensive.
It could get more expensive
pretty quickly. On one level, it makes a lot of sense, particularly if we want to be competitive in technology and other industries like that. But like you say, it sounds like it's a great idea, but there are a lot of unintended consequences that might come out of this.
Well, there are a lot of competing issues in the budget this year, and this is one of them.
Is this unusual?
No, but the governor has made a real point that she really wants this particular issue. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
I completely agree, but again, the devil is going to be in the details on this issue. They only have to have a 2.0 right now. I've heard loud and clear from people, if we're actually going to do this, they want to have a minimum of 3.0 grade point average.
How about 2.5, because that's what I had when I went to UConn.
But that's, if you're going to get something for free from the tax, and it's not free. The state of Rhode Island's taxpayers are going to be picking up this bill.
Yeah. Well,
so there is no free.
That's true about all state expenditures. That's where it comes from, basically, us or the feds.
And one of the things that came through very clear in the testimony was that the biggest issue really is the student loan debt. And I've had 3 children. My third one is actually going to graduate from URI this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is that the last one?
It's my last one. And, you know, we've incurred debt, they've incurred debt. The debt is really a very hard issue. And I think the state of Maryland did something kind of unique. They put it so that if the kids stay in the state after they graduate, they have a way to get some reimbursement for their
Okay,
school
so
debt.
there's an incentive for
There's
the
an
kids
incentive
to
for them to stay.
stay local.
This program, if we did it, you know, we could educate these kids, and then they could fly away like the locusts.
Or go to Massachusetts.
They go to Massachusetts or to go to California. They could go anywhere.
Yeah.
There is nothing to preclude them from doing that.
Yeah. You know, on this general issue, I'm just not sure that throwing another $30 million at the schools would do any good unless they have a plan. There's a lot of issues that we have in trying to graduate kids that actually know how to read and write well and can logic and all this kind of stuff.
Well, the $30 million is more of a tax offset to the cities and towns. That's what it would be.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand. And
And
so
we're
that,
paying the
and that's
taxes, the money's being used.
That's the positive side. Then the only other, again, why are we doing this at all then if we're just going to continue to go status quo in the schools? Again, it's an educational issue that I'm not qualified to really
No,
talk
my
about.
wife is an educator, and God bless her, I leave it to the pros.
Another issue, a small one, but I think it's kind of interesting, is there's a bill has been put forward to include mobile homes as part of our low income and moderate income housing. What's your position?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, it would benefit both the communities I represent, Tiverton and Portsmouth.
Yeah.
I think it would go towards the percentage they're required to have. And as we spoke about before, people are living in these places, so they should count. They shouldn't be exempted.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
should go towards the quota.
These are people living in mobile homes. They're
Or pre-manufactured
or
homes.
pre-manufactured home. Yeah, it's a very finite difference, I guess, between those. And it seems to me they certainly should too. So I hope you think that'll go forward.
I hope so. Hope in one form or another. I really do.
Okay, and as
Both
we
Representative Canary and I have looked at this bill very seriously, and we believe it would help our communities.
okay, and as we talked about before, this is something the state can do. It's not a
Yes.
federal mandate of
No,
some kind.
this is something the state can do on its own.
Okay.
It's a definition change.
I guess there was a rumor, at least, that our local tourism bureau, Discover Newport, was going to take a hit from the share of hotel tax money they get. You mentioned earlier that that's not the case. Could you?
Well, last year, House Finance went in. We put it back the way it was before. Representative Lauren Carson from Newport has had a study commission ever since we had the cooler, warmer fiasco with the administration, and she's really gotten into the weeds on this particular issue. There's been a lot of information that's come out of this, and I think we will look at this to keep the Newport group whole again this year.
Okay, but it's just this year? What about going forward? Is that going?
Well,
we don't know. I guess.
We're trying to resolve the whole issue, and I think
Yeah.
at a temporary fix, we'll keep it going again this year, like we had it did last year, as opposed to giving all the money to
Okay, so they're not
Congress.
going to lose anything this year.
We hope so. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still being looked at as the big budget
You know,
issue.
the basic problem is there's not enough money to go around for all these things. I guess.
No, and there are a lot of
that's the key
competing
issues,
of
yeah.
competing asks.
Another issue, you know, they're all over the map, and this is another one. I think two Republican legislators have proposed a bill that would return revenues generated by the Rhode Island Emergency Services telephone surcharge, which I think is $1 on everybody's bill, and more, I think, for cell phones, to fund emergency services only, as it was back when it was started, I guess, in 2000. The state made $17 million from the fees last year, and only $5 million went to supporting emergency services, and this includes the state's 911 system. The rest, $12 million, went to the general fund. What's your position on this?
I don't see a problem with it. I see that we need to fund these things. If we carve that money out,
Yeah.
And make sure our emergency systems are maintained and kept up to date, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and especially today, things they at least appear more dangerous.
And the technology is constantly changing.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've
We need to
seen
keep up to date
problems
with
where
it.
some of this stuff has failed recently in the news, where the 911 system didn't work, people were put on hold, et cetera, et cetera.
And people were making calls with their cell phones out.
Yeah, so we need to at least put some money at that, try to get it
Yes,
fixed.
I totally agree. It's a very important system.
Okay, another one that's got to be near and dear to your heart is Speaker Mattiello has announced that his goal this year was to rescind the car tax. Now, he and the governor have differing views on how this might be done, but towns like Portsmouth, this is usually sort of comes back to the town in a way of revenue, and so we could lose, a couple $1 million or so in revenues if this is just done with no reimbursement. How do you think this might work out? And what do you think about this issue?
Well, there are two plans. There's one that the governor proposed, which would be a 30% reduction in the values, and she would refund the cities and towns for that amount. And we have the speaker's plan.
From where?
Well, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts in the budget.
Yeah. Okay.
And she has some fairly aggressive views on some things, and we're trying to work with her and work through them.
Okay.
There's a speaker's plan, and he is committed to have a $40 million reimbursement to the cities and towns this year, and over the course of the next 5 years to eliminate and reimburse the cities and towns for their loss of the car tax. Our plan in the House would eliminate the car tax and reimburse the cities and towns so that there would be no loss to Portsmouth or Tiverton.
Okay, and you're saying that you can find that kind of money in the budget somewhere to do this?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there's a
great.
will, there's a way. The speaker had a very hard re-election, and unlike the governor, he went door to door. We're a much smaller market. We represent 14,000, 15,000 people. We go to door. It's very retail. When you go door to door, especially as frequently as the speaker did, you really hear what your constituents are looking for. You don't hear the loudest voices, you hear from your constituents. Some are quiet, some are less quiet, some are a little more vituperative, but you hear directly from your constituents. He heard loud and clear, as many of us have, that the car tax is just something people in Rhode Island hate. They hate it.
Yeah.
And give you a quick example. My wife, we had a 2001 or 2002 Chevy Suburban. And one year it was valued by the town of Tiverton at $10,000. I was amazed, but the very next year it went up.
It went up.
It went up in value. It was like $11,000. I'm thinking, this is just not possible.
Yeah.
Now, I've probably skewed the numbers here, but the point of the story is that the value went up 1 year from the previous year. I'm thinking the car's value didn't go up. It just went up because they had to maintain what they're bringing in.
Yeah, exactly.
And this would stop all that.
Yeah. I'm actually for the speaker on this issue. I think that'd be probably the best move. Again, my concern was just finding the money, and if you think it's up there somewhere, just a matter of moving things around in the budget.
Well, it's one of the things the governor wants to put $30 million into education. And part of her budget plan this year is also to remove $40 million from the hospitals, which in effect is an $80 million cut to the hospital because we lose the federal match.
Yeah.
So whether we have the benefit for 3,700 kids over the next 2 years, or we benefit all the citizens of Rhode Island through our hospital system and Medicare and Medicaid, those are decisions. Those are hard decisions that we have to make.
Yeah.
But that's what we get paid to do. That's what we get elected to do.
Right.
And we have to make the hard decisions. Everyone says, well, I want the college program. That's great. But then in order to get that, there are cuts other places.
See, people don't necessarily see that. I mean, the idea of free college sounds great.
It does. Like I said before, if we were flush with cash, this is a great idea.
Yeah, but we're not.
But we're not. And we have to make some very hard decisions.
Yeah. Now, speaking exactly almost of this, let me segue into the line item veto.
Mm-hmm.
I know you recently wrote a letter to the editor.
Which the Province Journal promptly cut in half.
Did they really?
Yes, they did. And they published my home phone number, which I found was
That's
really
kind of
unprofessional.
dirty
And I
pool,
had a
yeah.
couple people call me, actually threaten my family.
What?
Yes.
Well, I don't.
So Ed Acorn and the Providence Journal, I think, were really unprofessional in
Yeah.
their attack on me on this particular
Yeah,
issue.
that is kind of ridiculous, I think. But I guess to me, the issue itself, and I think they owe you an apology if they haven't already, but the issue itself seems fairly simple. It allows the governor to veto just one item rather than the whole budget.
Well, it sounds simple again.
Yeah.
The devil's in the details.
Exactly.
There are 44 states that have line item veto. There are 44 different versions of line item veto.
Okay.
Which one do they want? I hear people say, I want line item veto. Great.
Yeah.
Which one do you want? They have ones that are very simple that will allow the governor to only cut an article out of the budget or an item out of the budget. There are ones, I think it's Missouri, they call it the Frankenstein version. It allows the governor to go in and actually carve out words. So you could have
Just words.
words, just words. You could have a program that says, thou shalt not do this, and the governor could go in and cross out the word not and change the entire meaning of the bill that's been put before him
Yeah.
or her.
Well, the thing is, hasn't any kind of plan been put forward? I mean, what?
No. And I've talked to the speaker about this. We're actually proposing putting a commission together this year to go through this and evaluate it, because there are so many open options on this.
Yeah.
And the reason why I personally oppose it, there are two reasons. As the whip in the House, if we veto something, and if we put something through and the governor vetoes it, and it comes back to us, a small group in the House could then hold us hostage for items that they want in order to override the governor's veto.
Yeah.
And secondly, as it happened with Governor Chafee when we added the Sakonnet River Bridge toll issue, the whole plan to get the bridges off the tolling system and to fund that four-bridge system, which we worked very hard on. The governor, if we had had line item veto, could have vetoed that. We did not have 50 votes in the House when that bill went through, when that article went through. We had like 48. We were under the 2/3.
Yeah.
So his veto
Would have
would have
killed
been
it.
sustained, and we'd have a bridge
Yeah.
right now that would be tolled.
Yeah. We're almost out of time, as usual. You know. Let me just hit a couple issues. If you could just give me a short version. Ethics reform. Are we doing enough in Rhode Island?
No, I have a bill I'm working on right now to do campaign finance reform. Working with the governor, the Common Cause, the ACLU, the Secretary of State, and I think we're going to come up with something that's effective.
Good. That's been a perennial issue, I think, in Rhode Island.
As evidenced by some of my colleagues.
There are a couple bills being introduced to establish a single-payer health care system, which sounds interesting. I don't know if it's feasible for a state to do this, but what's your quickly? What is your take on it?
I've just briefly looked at the bill. I think it's something we as a group really need to look at. And again, it's all going to depend on where our spending priorities are going to be.
Yeah, Jay, we've talked about many things, and I probably could sit here for another half hour with you. I appreciate your candor, by the way. Thanks for joining us today, and I hope you come back.
Thank you for
We'll
having
do
me.
this again later on.
Look forward to it.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time on Portsmouth This Week.